In a past life, Liam had cancer, and everyone kept it a secret from me. To set me free, he began cheating on me, verbally humiliating me, and emotionally abusing me. I couldn't take it anymore and finally agreed to divorce him. His friends, however, lectured me from their moral high ground, telling me about his good intentions and the truth about his cancer. In a state of mental collapse, I attempted suicide to die with him. But after I died, Liam was miraculously saved. I watched him weep uncontrollably at my grave. Under the persuasion of friends, I regained my strength and married the woman he had cheated with. On the day of the reunion, Liam jokingly suggested we divorce. I didn't get angry. Instead, I replied calmly, "All right." After I said those words, the scene suddenly fell into an eerie silence. In the vast luxury private room, I continued to eat the luxury soup in my bowl as if nothing had happened. Liam slowly let go of Nina's hand. The handsome face that had jokingly said he had fallen in love with someone else and wanted to divorce me gradually became stiff and ugly. He seemed completely unprepared for my response. Or perhaps he knew how much I loved him. So even if it was just a joke, I took it seriously, got angry, and started causing a scene. How could I possibly say the word good so calmly? His friends, who had hidden agendas, looked at each other in shock. For a moment, their plan to watch me get angry, cry, and make a fool of myself was shattered. The plot took a sharp turn, catching everyone off guard. But I wasn't very happy. I calmly scanned the faces of the people in front of me. Finally, my gaze settled on Nina's vibrantly made-up face. In my previous life, I had regarded her as my best friend. But I had forgotten. She and Liam had been childhood friends. How protective and loyal she had been toward me in the past. But in critical moments, the knives she had stabbed into my back were deep and painful. Nina's expression grew slightly uneasy under my gaze. She glanced at Liam instinctively. Seeing him staring intently at me with a stern face, jaw clenched and teeth gritted. Her eyes dimmed for a moment. She quickly put on a cheerful smile and walked over to pull me. "Oh, don't be angry, don't be angry. It was just Zach's idiotic prank. We were just teasing you." I took a step back, avoiding her outstretched hand. There was no smile on my face as I looked at Liam and said, "But I wasn't joking. Seriously, let's get a divorce, Aki." Nina stood between me and Liam. She looked at me, then at Liam, looking utterly helpless. Her acting was always top-notch. If I hadn't died once and my wandering soul had witnessed her kicking over my tombstone with a face full of disgust, I probably wouldn't have known. Beneath Nina's confident and generous exterior, there lies a twisted and jealous heart. It was rare for her to look so helpless. Though it wasn't my fault. But everyone present still directed their anger toward me because of her. Zach pushed his chair aside and walked over, speaking impatiently, "Evelyn, don't take it too far. I told you it was a joke. You had to make such a scene. Can't you take a joke?" Those words were truly ironic. They were the ones joking, and I was the one being humiliated. Yet they turned it around and blamed me for not being able to take a joke. Zach has always spoken harshly, his words laced with sarcasm. I used to think that was just his personality, that he treated everyone like that, so I tried to endure it. But later I realized. He only treats me like that. As Liam's wife. From the very beginning, I've never been accepted by his friends. I pretended not to hear Zach calling the dog. My gaze remained fixed on Liam. Liam saw that I wasn't backing down. He finally realized that what I had just said was mostly serious. He was so angry he laughed. He mocked me coldly. Then he grabbed Nina's arm and pulled her into his embrace. He glared at me and said vengefully, "Fine, you said it. Don't regret it. Go pack your things. We're getting a divorce tomorrow." After saying that, in front of everyone, he suddenly lowered his head and kissed Nina's lips. It was an emotional, possessive kiss, starting with their lips touching, then gradually deepening into a wet, passionate kiss. The soft lighting above them added to the romantic atmosphere. The woman's soft waist bent downward, and the man's long fingers, with clearly defined knuckles, gripped her slender neck. It was like a scene from the most passionate part of a TV drama. I saw Nina push against Liam's chest a few times, hesitating between resistance and surrender. Unable to push him away, she unconsciously moved upward, wrapping her arms around his neck. I heard someone gasp in shock, followed by the excited sounds of people pulling out their phones to film the scene. I was closest to them, witnessing every unspeakable detail. I opened my pale, trembling lips, wanting to say something. But I didn't know what to say. There was just a soft spot in my heart that had been shattered. It felt like something precious I had hidden deep inside me. In the moment when Liam didn't care about me and kissed someone else. It shattered gently, silently. Then I closed my eyes tightly, numb, and turned to walk away. It started to drizzle outside. The world was shrouded in chaos, streetlights cast a dim, yellow glow, and tree branches shrouded in darkness swayed wildly in the cold wind. A couple stood beside me, murmuring softly for a while. Then the man took off his jacket and wrapped it around the woman, the two of them clinging tightly together as they rushed into the rain. I watched them quickly climb into the car parked by the roadside. My expression was dazed. I felt like I had forgotten something. But I couldn't remember what it was. Not until I got home and started tidying up my room. Suddenly, I found an umbrella at the bottom of a box, and tears welled up in my eyes, spilling over. It was a transparent folding umbrella. The inside of the umbrella was covered with my favorite cartoon characters drawn in black marker. One day after school, it started raining heavily. I was supposed to go home with my friends. But then I saw my classmate standing under the eaves, looking up at the gray sky with a distant and lonely expression. He must have forgotten his umbrella. But there was no one at his house who could bring him an umbrella. I suddenly felt a pang of sympathy. After hesitating for a moment, I finally handed him the umbrella I was holding. "You don't have to return it. Just consider it a thank you for helping me with my homework." I pretended not to care, using a generous gesture to hide my girlish feelings as I handed over my favorite umbrella. Then, without daring to look at his reaction, I turned and ran under my friend's umbrella, urging her to leave quickly. My friend laughed at my flushed cheeks. I was embarrassed and angry, playfully fighting with her. But I couldn't help glancing back through the rain curtain under the umbrella. The young man, dressed in his blue and white school uniform, stood out in the crowd with his tall, slender figure, holding the umbrella tightly in his hands. The sky was pouring rain, but all I could hear was the loud thudding of my heart. The next day, the rain continued to fall. I forgot how I felt when I saw him again that day. But I still remember every little movement he made as he walked into the classroom through the back door. The transparent cartoon umbrella hadn't ended up in the corner of the hallway with a row of colorful umbrellas. It was held by the teenager's long, fair hands, and the rain on the umbrella was gently wiped away with a soft handkerchief. Then the umbrella was smoothed out, folded neatly, and carefully tucked into his desk, alongside his textbooks. 18-year-old Liam lifted his head and met my gaze before I could look away. He smiled, his eyebrows and eyes curving like a new moon. He said he would cherish it for the rest of his life. At that moment, the thin veil between us had not yet been pierced. But in the intense, suppressed beats of our two young hearts, we both knew. What he meant was that he would cherish me for the rest of his life. The rain stopped. I wiped away my tears and calmed myself down. Then I picked up the umbrella that had been forgotten by its owner for years. Its skin was old and yellowed, the cartoon design was blurry, and the frame was rusted and decayed, emitting a foul odor. I looked at it, sitting by the bedside in the darkness, and stayed awake all night. I don't know how long it was before the night faded away. A streak of dawn broke through the clouds, casting my silhouette in sharp black and white. I moved my cold, stiff limbs, stood up, picked up the old umbrella, and threw it into the trash can. Then, I dialed Liam's number. That summer rain from my youth. It was time to end it. The phone rang many times before someone finally answered. but what reached my ears was a lazy, sleepy female voice. "Hello? Who is this?" She yawned. But in the silence that followed, it sounded a bit forced. After a moment, Nina's voice continued. She spoke softly, with a touch of apology and embarrassment. I picked up the wrong phone. "Wait a moment, I'll wake up Aki." "No need." I interrupted her. Then I said calmly, "Please tell him that I have everything ready. Let's meet at City Hall at 3 p.m. Without giving her a chance to respond, I hung up the phone. I hadn't eaten anything since last night. But I felt nauseous and wanted to vomit. What love? What deep affection? In the end, she turned around and slept with someone else. Those who are meant to cheat will cheat, no matter the reason. I recalled the previous life when I accidentally discovered this. My heart ached so much I nearly fainted. I lost all rationality and confronted them like a hysterical woman. Nina's face showed regret, but she claimed it was a misunderstanding, an accident, and begged me not to blame Liam. Liam didn't even bother to defend himself. He let me cry and scream in front of him, demanding to know if his previous words still held any weight. He remained silent, as if there was something he couldn't bring himself to say. He looked like he had been wronged, like he had endured a lot but couldn't express it. In the end, everyone sided with Liam. They said he had his reasons, that he didn't mean it, and that I shouldn't blame him like this. They were the ones who did it. Yet I was the one who ended up being the one at fault. He was so calm, making me look like a madwoman. I couldn't help but start doubting myself. Had I really gone too far? Maybe I shouldn't have jumped to conclusions and accused him of having a pure friendship with Nina all these years. That's what made Liam act impulsively and confirm his ambiguous relationship with Nina. I was in a daze and finally agreed to divorce. But after Liam handed me the divorce agreement, his condition worsened. Zach and the others couldn't stand it anymore and rushed to confront me, accusing me of provoking him. He asked me if I knew. Liam did all this out of revenge, just to avoid dragging me down. We were childhood friends who sat together in class and entered marriage together. Liam's parents are both deceased. I was his only family. He knew I would never leave him no matter what. So he chose this extreme method to force me away. I finally accepted the reality that he had cheated on me and no longer loved me. But Zach and the others said it was because he loved me too much that he hurt me like this. Liam could have lived 2 more years. Now, because of my tantrums, his condition suddenly worsened. It's all my fault. I only have one voice, I can't argue against all of them. In the end, I suffered a complete mental breakdown. After glancing at Liam, who was unconscious in the intensive care unit, I rushed to the hospital rooftop and jumped off. Looking back now, it was so foolish. If I could do it again, I would choose to let myself go and let go of everything from the past. However, I waited for a long time at City Hall. By the time the staff had all left, Liam finally showed up. I wasn't feeling well and only woke up half an hour ago. Before I could ask him anything, Liam started explaining. His breathing was uneven, and the collar of his long coat was slightly disheveled. He hadn't even had time to fix his hair, which was messy and sticking out in all directions, as if he had just crawled out of bed. He glanced at the closed City Hall and exhaled. I couldn't tell if he was sighing or letting out a breath of relief. Then he turned to me coldly and said, "Let's reschedule." There was nothing else we could do. I told him to contact me directly when he had time, then turned to leave without saying another word. But Liam suddenly spoke up. "This morning when you called me," Lon answered. "What did she tell you?" His probing tone made me feel inexplicably angry. The resentment that had been building up in my chest suddenly erupted. I turned around and sarcastically said, "Aren't you two lying in the same bed? What did she say that you don't know?" Liam paused. What surprised me was that his expression softened instantly, as if he had confirmed something. He truly sighed in relief. He sincerely explained, "You misunderstood. I drank too much last night, and she drove me home. I wasn't feeling well, so she stayed to take care of me. He explained to me in a rare calm tone, "You misunderstood. I drank too much last night and she drove me home. I wasn't feeling well, so she stayed to take care of me." Never mind how absurd his words sounded. Given our current relationship, I didn't understand why he felt the need to explain any of this to me. But soon, I understood. Liam suddenly coughed in front of me, and his face turned pale. His handsome brows furrowed tightly, as if in pain, and he coughed several more times. I couldn't tell if he was faking it or not. Either way, it wasn't my concern. I turned and walked away. The sound of hurried footsteps came from behind me, and Liam grabbed my arm. His face was pale and grim, his jaw clenched tightly. He almost gritted his teeth as he said, "I told you I'm not feeling well, and you don't care at all?" I knew he was sick, seriously ill. But so what? I moved my arm and frowned, "Let go." Liam not only didn't let go, but tightened his grip on me even more, his expression growing even worse. The one who wanted to divorce me was him. Now I've agreed to divorce him so readily. He was unhappy again. Liam glared at me with a fierce expression for a moment before suddenly letting go of my hand. He coughed violently, his voice heavy, "Fine, I'll let you go." He was holding back his anger, as if he were feeling an indescribable pain in his heart. I didn't say a word and started to walk away. But suddenly, a loud crash came from behind me. Liam had fainted. I quickly called an ambulance and had him rushed to the hospital. After hesitating for a moment, I called Nina. Anyway, after divorcing me, Liam would eventually marry her. It wouldn't make sense for me, his soon-to-be ex-wife, to stay here. Nina, upon hearing the news, said nothing and arrived at the hospital shortly afterward. Zach was with her. I stood up from the bench in the hallway and was about to tell them that Liam had been taken to the emergency room. But I saw Nina storming toward me with a cold expression on her face. She suddenly raised her hand and slapped me hard across the face. I was stunned. I heard Nina speak in a voice colder than I had ever heard before, filled with hatred, "You're nothing but a jinx. Do you want to kill him before you're satisfied?" I touched my numb cheek. I could hear a sharp ringing in my ears. I raised my head to strike back. However, Zach acted quickly, pushing me hard and knocking me to the ground. He stood in front of Nina, looking down at me. He shouted angrily, "You dare to strike back? Try hitting me!" I braced myself against the cold ground, trembling with anger. Just then, the emergency room lights went out, and a doctor emerged from inside. Nina didn't bother to settle accounts with me and rushed forward immediately. Zach followed closely behind. But as he passed by me, he paused. Then, the expensive Italian handmade leather shoes on his feet crushed the back of my hand that was braced against the ground. Standing at 1.8 meters tall, with a muscular build, he seemed to crush my entire body with his weight. The pain was excruciating, and I screamed in agony, tears streaming down my face. I looked up at him. But under the dim light of the corridor, his features were blurred, and he was grinning maliciously. "If you've got the guts, go call the police." Like the breath of a demon, he taunted me with his words. In an instant, I felt as though he had dragged me back to that dark period of my past when I was mentally bullied and suffered a mental breakdown. A bucket of icy water was poured over my head, leaving me numb from head to toe. The thought of calling the police, which had been genuine, vanished in an instant. I suddenly remembered. Zach's family was extremely powerful. Calling the police would be like calling Zach directly and accusing him of bullying me. What else could I expect besides mockery? Before, he might have still cared about Liam and dared not go too far even when joking with me. But now, my relationship with Liam is completely broken. He no longer hides his hostility toward me. I used to not understand. Why does he hate me so much? But now I know. He, Zach, is Nina's lapdog. Nina likes Liam, so he follows her every move. Nina hates me, so he hates me with a vengeance. I sat on the ground for a while, waiting for the pain to subside and my limbs to regain feeling. When I finally stood up, I didn't look back once, rushing to escape the scene in a hurry. I called a moving company, packed all my belongings, and left the bustling city center. I returned to the old house in the suburbs. Opening the door, an old-fashioned TV drama was playing, lulling me to sleep. The house smelled musty and old. An old woman in a wheelchair was dozing on the balcony. She heard the noise and lifted her dark, sagging eyelids. Seeing me come in with bags of luggage. As if she had expected this, she twisted her lips into a mocking smile and asked me, "See? I told you so. You've been kicked out." I pretended not to hear her and continued packing my belongings in silence. My mother straightened up from her wheelchair, trembling, and put on her old reading glasses. She didn't ask any questions or show any concern. Instead, she began urgently trying to match me with the son of our downstairs neighbor. "I told you not to reach for the stars. Why would a rich family want someone like you? You have no brains and no looks. Now you've been played for years, and they just kick you out. That guy surnamed G didn't look like a good person to me from the start. Thank goodness you don't have kids. At least you can still get married. I'll call Aunt Linda and see if her son is home. Don't bother cleaning up, hurry up and get dressed. Go meet him." She fumbled with the buttons on her old phone, pressing one by one. I threw my clothes into the suitcase with a thud and snapped, "What? Am I supposed to die without a man? If you like Aunt Linda's son so much, why don't you marry him yourself? You keep talking about meeting him. People will think he's so great. I just want to ask if he's out of prison yet. You're introducing me to a man who's been messing around outside with no proper job? Am I really your daughter?" My mother's face turned grim, her eyes fierce enough to devour me. She scolded me, "He doesn't even mind that you're divorced. You're being picky. If you keep this up, no one will want you. If you don't marry, do you plan to drag me down for the rest of my life?" I couldn't get a word out, choking on my words, feeling like I was going to burst. There was no point in talking to her. She wouldn't listen to anything. Her outdated, rigid beliefs had seeped into her very bones. Even her own flesh and blood had to make way for her. I gave up packing and shoved all my things into my room, slamming the door shut. "I won't drag you down. I'll move out in a few days." The sound of a wheelchair rolling came from outside. Then there was a loud banging on the door. My mother angrily scolded me, saying I had grown wings and was rebelling against her. She said, "Even if you move out, you'll still have to go on blind dates for me. Your divorce has already brought enough shame upon me. Do you want me to be unable to hold my head up in front of the neighbors? And what's wrong with Xiao Su? Don't listen to what others say. I'm your mother. How could I harm you?" I found my earplugs and stuffed them into my ears. Then I started searching for a rental apartment on my phone. This house was still the same as before. Every extra second felt suffocating. I thought, as long as I found a place to hide and waited for Liam to wake up and divorce him, my world would be at peace. But things never go as planned. Once again, I couldn't eat and ran to the bathroom to vomit. Holding the pregnancy test, I stared at the 2 red lines and lost myself. At this time in my previous life, I was still arguing fiercely with Liam. At that time, I was on the brink of a mental breakdown because of his affair with Nina, constantly suspicious and paranoid. I didn't even notice the abnormalities in my own body. In this life, in just a few days, I had already decided to divorce Liam. And his condition deteriorated prematurely, sending him to the hospital. I didn't stay by his side, I left immediately. Nina and the others never had the chance to tell me the truth about Liam's cancer and use it to attack me. I also accidentally discovered that I was pregnant. In other words, when I died in my previous life, I was also pregnant with a baby. 2 lives lost in one death. I pressed my forehead against the mirror on the sink, closing my eyes. I couldn't express the sorrow and pain in my heart. But when I opened my eyes again, biting my pale lips, and looked at myself in the mirror. I knew this child couldn't stay. It had come at the worst possible time. Liam and I had a tough battle ahead of us, and we simply didn't have the capacity to care for it. I placed my hand on my abdomen, and a plan began to take shape in my mind. Even though my relationship with Liam was strained at the moment. After all these years, he wouldn't just let go so easily. As long as he still cared. Then this child, who was destined not to stay, could serve its purpose to the fullest. I exhaled and whispered an apology to the baby. The next morning, I tiptoed out of the room, intending to slip out quietly. But I didn't expect my mother to be up so early. She was still sitting on the small balcony. The morning light was faint, making it hard to see her expression. Her voice was soft and ghostly. Getting up so early, going to meet some wild man? I felt uncomfortable and retorted, it's definitely not to meet your little Sue. Surprisingly, this time, she didn't argue with me. Instead, she said softly, Mom has already found out for you. Little Sue will be back in a few days. Go and meet him. With a slam, I closed the door. What she said afterward was probably more of the same old nonsense, and I didn't bother to listen. I went to the hospital where Liam was staying. But I didn't go straight to his ward to visit him. Instead, I hid in the shadows to observe. Liam had already woken up, and Nina had been by his side all day. Zach rarely stayed in the ward for long. After a while, he would come out and go to the stairwell to smoke in private. But he couldn't bear to leave. He could only watch, over and over again, like a masochist, as the woman he loved spoke tenderly to his best friend. At that moment, I slowly walked down the stairs. Hearing the sound, Zach looked up. Seeing it was me, Zach immediately frowned. He exhaled a puff of smoke and said harshly, What are you doing here? Haven't you learned your lesson yet? I stared at him and suddenly smiled. You say Nina is such a spoiled princess, yet she's so lowly, willing to be someone else's mistress? Zach's expression changed instantly. He pointed at me, his expression fierce, and shouted, Watch your mouth. I raised an eyebrow, approaching him silently. I continued, I've changed my mind. I won't divorce Achi. This way, she'll never have a chance to rise above. But she's such a promiscuous tramp, and you're just a pathetic loser, you two are perfectly matched. Zach cursed under his breath, his temples throbbing. He instinctively shoved me hard. He was about to strike again. But he didn't expect me to lose my footing and tumble down the stairs. Zach froze, furrowing his brows as he stood above me, glaring down coldly. Until I curled up, clutching my stomach, pale and trembling, and said, My child. Zach's fingertips trembled violently, and the cigarette fell from his hand. He was completely shocked. Although medical attention was sought promptly, the child couldn't be saved. This was inevitable. After all, to be on the safe side, I had taken an abortion pill before coming here. When I opened my eyes, the first thing I saw was Liam, dressed in a hospital gown, with red eyes, standing by my side. When he saw me wake up, he sat up straight, apparently wanting to hold my hand. But his hand dropped halfway, and he slumped back down. His eyes were moist, and he said in a hoarse voice, The child is gone. We had always wanted our own child. For this reason, Liam had started trying to conceive early, reducing his social engagements at work, quitting smoking and drinking, and undergoing regular health checkups. It was during one of these checkups that the issue was discovered. I looked at him in shock and sadness, and tears streamed down my cheeks. I noticed Zach standing in the corner, head down and silent. I struggled to lift my finger, pointing at him, my voice trembling with grief and resentment. It was him. He pushed me down the stairs. The incident happened suddenly, catching everyone off guard. At that moment, Liam, upon learning the truth about the child, turned to look at Zach, unable to believe what he was hearing. Zach opened his mouth but couldn't defend himself. After all, even if I spoke harshly, he had laid a hand on me, that was a fact. The next second, Liam stood up and charged at him, punching him in the head. He grabbed Zach's collar tightly, furious, and shouted at him, "Are you crazy? She's my wife. That was my child." The two of them fought fiercely, with Zach taking most of the blows, not daring to fight back. Until Nina tried to pull them apart and was pushed aside by Liam. Zach finally snapped back, "What about Nina? What do you think she is to you?" The air in the hospital room suddenly grew tense. Liam glanced at me, lying on the hospital bed, weak from the pain of losing my child. He took a deep breath to steady himself. He coughed once and forced it back down. Nina wanted to go to him to comfort him, but he pushed her away. How similar the scene was. But this time, Liam said firmly, "I've always only seen Nina as a friend." At those words, Nina stumbled back, her eyes filled with disappointment and pain as she looked at him. Zach cursed, shoved him aside, and dragged Nina out of the room. It was as if the person who had kissed Nina passionately in front of me and told me not to regret it wasn't him. If I didn't know there was something wrong with him, I might have thought I was suffering from some kind of mental disorder. I chose to stay cautious and keep my distance, neither cold nor warm toward him. Finally, one night, I got the answer I wanted. It was late at night, dark and quiet. Liam thought I was asleep and got up to go to the balcony to smoke. I heard that strange voice again. Liam was talking to it, sounding a bit impatient. He asked, "System, what is Evelyn's current love value for me?" The system replied, 61%. Liam let out a heavy sigh. He said with frustration, "No wonder she's been acting like a different person since I mentioned divorce. It seems I was too hasty." There was a moment of silence. Liam whispered, "That idiot Zach, I wonder what he did behind my back to make her use me for revenge, even abandoning the child." I was startled. He had figured it out. The system suddenly reminded him, "Host, mission time remaining, 25 days. Liam crushed at his cigarette and said in a low voice, "I know. No need to remind me." He turned and started walking toward the ward. The room was so quiet that only his footsteps could be heard. But his voice rang out clearly in my ears at the same time. The female lead and the male supporting character are unreliable. I have to do this myself. I've built a soundproof basement at home. I have plenty of ways to make her willingly die for me. By the way, if she's afraid of pain and dares not commit suicide. If I kill her with my own hands, does that count as completing the mission? The sound of a blanket being pulled back came from beside me. Then, the bed sank, emitting a creaking sound. The system's voice was so close it sounded like it was inside my head. It said, "Count it." My phone had been taken by Liam. Usually, he would tell me to rest and not touch it. Until the next day, my phone suddenly rang a few times. Someone had sent me a message. Liam, who had been peeling fruit, heard the sound and picked up my phone to take a look. He looked up and asked me with a faint smile, "Honey, who is Sugu? Why did he suddenly ask you to meet him? You've never mentioned him before." I was startled. But I forced myself to remain calm and reached out my hand to him. "He's my cousin. We're on good terms with my family, but he moved away a few years ago, so we don't keep in touch much. That's why I didn't tell you. He probably came back to visit my mom on his way home." Liam listened without suspicion. He knew the complicated relationship between my mom and me, and how old-fashioned and face-conscious she was. If I didn't respond to my relatives' messages, my mom would probably call and start yelling at me the next second. The words she used were so vulgar and offensive. Liam had been scolded by her before and still avoided mentioning her to me. So he didn't ask any further questions and simply handed the phone back to me. I quickly scanned the messages. "Sugu, where are you? Sugu, address. Sugu, come meet me immediately." While Liam got up to wash his hands, I quickly sent him 2 addresses, one for the hospital and one for Liam's house. "Sugu? Me? Save me!" After confirming he saw the messages, I immediately deleted all 3. I then sent some irrelevant messages, roughly saying that I had argued with my mom and didn't want to go home, and I was too lazy to look for him, so he could just go play by himself. It sounded like a conversation between siblings. Lucas's speaking habits hadn't changed at all since he was a child. He only asked questions and greeted me. He asked if I was sick. I didn't respond further. Because a pale, slender hand snatched the phone from my hand. Liam scanned through the messages we had sent, then smiled lightly. But he didn't give the phone back to me. Instead, he turned it off. "All right, I've said everything I needed to say. Rest for a while longer. The driver will come to pick us up later." I clenched my hands under the blanket and asked him in a flat tone, "Are you better now?" Liam smiled ambiguously, "I can recover at home." That was his way of saying there was no room for discussion. Time was running out. Once I went home with him, my chances of escaping would be slim to none. So I took the risk of flipping over in bed and getting up while he was out of the room, then ran straight out the door. But I never expected this. Liam hadn't left at all. As soon as I opened the door, I collided head-on with Liam, who was waiting there like a hunter. He grabbed my wrist tightly. He laughed coldly, "You can hear the system's voice after all." An hour later, I was locked in the underground dungeon Liam had meticulously built. Thinking about it now, my only hope was that unreliable neighbor I hadn't seen in years. I felt a bit desperate. There were a few uncommon characters in the address. Would he recognize them? If I had known, I should have just given up and called the police the moment I got the phone. In my memory, Lucas was a troublemaker who never studied or behaved well. He was 5 years older than me. When I was still carrying a school bag and going to elementary school, he was already hanging out with the wrong crowd, fighting, and extorting protection money. Since our mothers were friends, he at least looked out for me. Once, some street thugs who were collecting protection money from me stole my pocket money. Lucas grabbed a stick and chased them for 2 miles. In the end, not only did he get my money back, but he also took all the money the thugs had stolen from me and bought candy for me. Later, I got into a prestigious high school and met Liam. He failed the entrance exam and chose to drop out and go to work. We never contacted each other again. Later, I occasionally heard rumors about him, all of them bad. He bullied girls and caused one to have an abortion, got involved in gambling and constantly asked his family for money, and got into trouble outside, ending up in jail. The image of the older brother who was a bit of a troublemaker but always looked out for me grew increasingly blurry in my memory. Even when my mom mentioned him, suggesting I go on a blind date with him, my first reaction was resistance and disgust. How could I place my hopes for escape on him? I moved my limbs slightly, and the chains locked to the bed had immediately clanged sharply, echoing endlessly in the dim, enclosed basement. Before the sound of the chains had faded, a steady set of footsteps approached the only exit from the basement. Liam had changed into a set of casual clothes, a soft beige sweater and gray trousers, that outlined his figure like a pile of jade. A faint smile played at the corners of his mouth, and the strands of hair falling across his forehead softened the sharpness of his brows and eyes, making him appear gentle and harmless. But this man wanted to kill me. He pulled the only chair in the room over and sat down beside my bed. Then he placed the item he was holding onto me. It was something he had taken from my bag. A divorce agreement. My signature was already on it. Liam looked at me, his eyes seeming a bit sad. Still smiling, he said to me, "You have a bad temper and a stubborn nature. Before seeing this divorce agreement, I had always believed that you agreed to divorce me out of spite. Why? Wife, do you really want to leave me?" I listened, feeling utterly absurd and ridiculous. It was as if I were meeting this person for the first time. I stared at him and said, word for word, "You're going to kill me, and you're asking if I want you to?" Liam's expression didn't change. He actually tried to explain. He said, "You heard it yourself. This is a mission I must complete. But once everything is done, I'll get a chance to save someone." He looked at me intently and promised, "I won't let you die. Even if the female lead of this world is Nina, the only person I love is you." "You don't believe me?" "It's not that I don't believe you. It's just that I don't believe a single word you say." Does he still think I'm a naive teenager who's easy to deceive? Liam sighed. He said regretfully, "I really love you. But if you insist on opposing me, I'll have no choice but to use more brutal means to achieve my goal." From that day on, Liam suddenly disappeared. Footsteps echoed on the stairs again. A familiar man walked in slowly. It was Zach. His eyes were vacant, unable to focus, and his movements were stiff. He seemed to be under someone's control. But the way he held the small knife in his hand and sliced my skin inch by inch was incredibly skilled. As I screamed in pain and struggled, curling up in the corner to hide from him, I suddenly realized Liam's intention. He had used that thing called the system to detect the person I despised and feared the most deep down in my heart. It was Zach. So he chose to have Zach torture me. Just like in my previous life, he was pushing me to the brink of a complete mental breakdown. Even after I realized Liam was the one behind it all, I couldn't help but pray for his return to save me. Liam knew me too well. We were classmates for 3 years, lovers for 7, and married right after college. To put it bluntly, he once counted every single strand of my hair. The slightest movement of mine, and he knew exactly what I was thinking. He and Zach, one playing the good cop and the other the bad cop, took turns wearing me down, breaking through my mental defenses bit by bit. He doesn't show up. But every time I wake up after being tortured, I see an item related to him in the room. Whether it's a small thing or a big one, it forces me to think about the happy memories we shared when I'm in pain. That day, I opened my eyes once again. But I didn't see Zach, that devil. Instead, there was a cute doll on the bedside table. And a note with neat, sharp handwriting that read, "Have another baby, okay? Happy face." Bright red blood trickled down my arm, soaking the already stained and smelly sheets. My long hair was a mess, my eyes bloodshot and swollen, staring intently at those words and the smiley face at the end. The last thread holding my mind together snapped with a mental collapse. Ah! I stared blankly at a man wearing short boots and a black leather jacket, extremely tall, with handsome features but a fierce expression, who appeared in this murky, dark basement. He looked at me and was also taken aback. Then, gritting his teeth, he took off his jacket and wrapped me carefully, saying through gritted teeth, "Don't be afraid, I'll take you away." Click. The bullet was chambered. Behind Lucas, Liam raised his pistol expressionlessly, aiming it at his head. Lucas hesitated for a moment but didn't stop. He picked me up horizontally, turned around, and faced Liam without fear. He stared at Liam and said in a deep voice, "Do you think I came alone? I'll say this once. Get out of the way." Liam didn't move an inch. He knew the truth was out, but he wasn't the least bit worried. He sneered, "She's my lawful wife. What happens between us is our business. Even the police can't do anything. No one will take her away from me." Lucas was stunned by his audacity. He tightened his arms around me and gritted his teeth. "Fun? You've hurt her like this, and you call that fun?" Seeing the standoff, no matter what was said, Liam wouldn't budge an inch. Lucas suppressed his anger and coldly dropped a bombshell. It was like a thunderclap out of nowhere, shattering my scattered consciousness into a single, sharp line. "If you still consider her your wife, let us go. Her mother is dying. You must at least let them see each other one last time." Speaking of my mother, she always cared deeply about what the neighbors thought of us. But in truth, aside from Aunt Linda downstairs, she had no real friends. She was gossipy, quick to scold, and her weathered face was perpetually furrowed with bitterness. She loved to complain to anyone who would listen. As a result, no one wanted to spend time with her. But according to the elders, she wasn't always like this. She used to be cheerful, lively, and could make friends anywhere. Unfortunately, she had poor judgment and married a terrible man. From then on, everything changed. My mother's legs were crippled by that man. What were once strong legs that could walk miles on foot now trembled even when climbing stairs. She tried to fight back. But the outcome was even worse, and she was beaten even more severely. Eventually, she dared not fight back anymore. At the time, I was in middle school and going through a rebellious phase. Seeing her hiding in the room every day, crying, I lost my temper and told her, "Why don't you just leave that man?" The result? She slapped me across the face. What did she say? She said, "No matter what, he's your father." I was both angry and heartbroken, feeling like they were two people who wanted to hurt each other, and I must have been crazy to get involved. But I never imagined that my mother, a futile, ignorant, and good-for-nothing woman, would have the courage to kill someone. And the person she killed was the man she had always told me was the head of our family, my father. The police arrived quickly, and the alleys were crowded with people. But she wasn't arrested. Because she has a mental illness. Even I was surprised by this. I watched her pull out stack after stack of medical diagnoses, each piece of paper stamped with the official seals of provincial and municipal hospitals. The police looked at each other in disbelief. My mother, however, remained calm, almost eerily so. Only I stared at the dates on those papers, stunned for a long time. The neighbors avoided us whenever they saw us from then on. They said it was definitely because my mother had been unfaithful, and my father had caught her, which made him so angry that he killed her. Otherwise, why would she have endured being beaten for so many years and only resisted so fiercely this time? They feared her and looked down on her, believing she was a ticking time bomb. They filed complaints with the neighborhood committee, pressuring her to move out as soon as possible. My mother ignored them all. She rarely left the house after that. Everyone harbored malice and contempt toward her. Only I knew the truth. She did it to protect me. A month before this incident, I was sexually assaulted by my own father. Just as he was about to force himself on me, my mother came home unexpectedly and caught them in the act. She flew into a rage, charging at my father like a mad lioness and wrestling with him. But they were no match for him. In the end, that beast beat my mother senseless and fled the scene in disarray, leaving us, mother and daughter, sitting on the ground, clinging to each other and weeping uncontrollably. I don't know what resolve she made that night. All I knew was that the next day, she knocked on Aunt Linda's door and asked her to take care of me for a while. She didn't hide anything from Aunt Linda and told her the whole truth. Aunt Linda was both heartbroken and furious, but she agreed immediately. Not only that, but she also called Lucas and told him to start picking me up from school and following me wherever I went from that day onward. However, she didn't tell Lucas the reason behind it. She said this matter would only be known to the three of us. No one else, not even her son, was allowed to know. Fortunately, Lucas listened to his mother and didn't ask any questions. During that time, he even stopped participating in the gatherings of the local gang and simply followed me around to protect me. A month passed without incident. I stood in the middle of the crowd, looking on in confusion as the police came to arrest my mother. She was covered in blood. Yet her expression was calm, even a bit cheerful. She didn't lower her head but walked away with the police, her gaze sweeping through the crowd. It finally landed on me. I saw her lips part slightly, and her voice gradually overlapped with the day I fled the house, unable to bear listening to her anymore. She said, "No matter what, your mother wouldn't harm you, would she?" I never got to see her one last time. And she didn't leave me a single word. Except for a property deed and a bank card with her life savings. These items lay quietly and sparsely on the coffee table in the living room. It was as if she was telling me, this was all she could leave me. Take care of yourself from now on. I felt as if my soul had been torn out of my body, my mind a blur, unable to feel sadness. But tears kept flowing, unstoppable. Until I was completely drained of strength, leaning against her wheelchair, and fainted. My mother's funeral was arranged by Aunt Linda and Lucas. To be precise, Lucas handled everything. Because if Aunt Linda hadn't held me back, I would have crawled into my mother's coffin and joined her in the earth. Warning! Warning! Only 1 day left to complete the mission. Host, please complete the mission immediately, or it will fail. I suddenly turned my head. Liam was standing not far behind me. He stared at me in silence. In his hand was a silver gun. The sky was overcast, and a damp, low wind swept the hem of his black coat. In the pocket of his chest, there was a white rose, as if he were mourning someone. I stared at him blankly for a long time. I saw his face grow paler, his eyes filled with sorrow and guilt. His lips trembled as he whispered to me, "I'm sorry." He finally raised his arm, aiming the black gun at me. Then, a dull thud echoed. Liam collapsed to the ground, the gun slipping from his hands and rolling into the low grass. Then, the gun was picked up by another hand, long, strong, with broad knuckles. Lucas held the gun in one hand and a shovel still covered in fresh dirt in the other. He said without a word, "Are you filming a TV show? Do you really think no one's around?" He muttered curses under his breath while calling the police, one leg still on the shovel, with Liam, who had been knocked unconscious, lying at his feet. The scene was oddly amusing. I tugged at the corner of my mouth, turned away, and continued burning paper money in the fire pit. A gentle breeze blew by. The sparks in the basin suddenly shot up, forming a brilliant whirlwind of fire in the air. One circle, then another, lingering reluctantly. Finally, the wind carried away the ashes of the burned paper money. As the day came to an end, night and day took their turn. I seemed to hear the system announce that Liam's mission had failed. My divorce proceedings with him were progressing smoothly. Due to Lucas' testimony and the irrefutable evidence from the basement, Liam was charged with murder and abuse of his wife. At the same time, his company declared bankruptcy, all his assets were frozen, and he was also sued for illegal possession of firearms. It seemed as though his protagonist aura had truly vanished. This time, Nina ignored his pleas for help. Zach not only refused to assist him but also added insult to injury by providing the court with additional evidence of his financial crimes. Overnight, Liam went from being a beloved prodigy to a despised capitalist. I watched the courtroom proceedings, seeing Liam go from a dazed expression to tears and pleading for mercy when the verdict was handed down. Suddenly, I realized that without that so-called protagonist's aura, he was nothing more than a despicable person. He was sentenced to death by firing squad. Before that, he begged to see me one last time. I wanted to hear his final words, so I went. When he saw me, he looked at me like I was his last hope, his eyes lighting up instantly. At that moment, he was unkempt, with dark circles under his eyes, and his expression was somewhat. He desperately pleaded with me, "There's still a chance. I still have a chance, my wife. Help me. The system is willing to give me another chance, as long as you help me. Listen to me. I've cleared many dungeon worlds. I've been an emperor, I've been a god. As long as you help me, I can take you to any world I've cleared to live in luxury. Don't you love me? Please help me." I've always been wary of that mysterious system. I asked him cautiously, "How do you want me to help you?" Liam suddenly leaned in, urgently saying, "My protagonist aura has disappeared. Go find the new male lead of this world. As long as you can seduce him and bring him to me, I'll have a way to steal his fortune." This was truly unexpected. After Liam stopped pretending, his face had become this thick. I sneered and stood up to leave. Liam climbed up the window to grab me but was pushed back by the police. He mentally collapsed and called out to me, "Wife. Wife. Evelyn. You said you'd always be by my side." My footsteps hesitated. But it was only a moment's pause before I continued walking forward without looking back. Seeing this, Liam was completely despairing. He collapsed back into the window, muttering, "This isn't fair. This isn't fair. The system deceived me. You said this was a simple quest. Why is this happening? How could anyone willingly die for another person? You're deceiving me. I'll file a complaint. Give me another chance, I'll start over. His voice, filled with mental collapse, grew fainter and fainter. It was as if my painful and gloomy past life was just a distant, distant dream. When I woke up, the sky was bright outside. He'll never know. I once truly died for him. He didn't deserve it. By the roadside. I looked at the luxury car worth 8 digits in front of me. I looked at the car, then at the slender, muscular arm hanging out the window, wearing black sunglasses and looking cool, Lucas. I asked him with a complicated tone, did you rob a bank? Or join a gang? Lucas's lips twitched, he took off his sunglasses, and looked at me speechlessly. Did someone poison your mouth? That's so mean. Can't I earn it myself? He opened the car door, stepped out with his long, elegant leg, then walked over to me and opened the passenger door with a pretentious air of gentlemanliness. I got into the car, fastened my seatbelt suspiciously, and looked at him disbelievingly. Lucas sighed helplessly. He had no choice but to explain to me, don't look down on your older brother for not going to school. Over the years, I've been working hard to make a living, okay? Making a living? I was taken aback and blurted out without thinking, aren't you in prison? Squeal. Lucas jerked the steering wheel, performing a smooth drift to bring the car to a stop by the roadside. He didn't say a word, taking a deep breath. Then he turned his head and looked at me expressionlessly. Who told you that about me? Did you believe it? This. I avoided his gaze nervously, trying to recall where the rumor had originated. In an instant, I suddenly understood everything. Lucas had also figured it out. He was both angry and amused, but he couldn't bring himself to scold me. He tapped my forehead with his finger, exasperatedly saying, you actually believe that old man? You forgot that he rejected my mom years ago and has been spreading rumors about our family ever since? What were you thinking? I realized I had misunderstood him, and I couldn't even look him in the eye. Looking back now, I can't believe I did that. Aunt Linda is such a kind person, and Lucas even protected me when I was a kid. How could I have been so brainwashed that I drifted away from them and even believed such rumors? So even if it was just a joke, I took it seriously, got angry, and started causing trouble. It was Zach who called me. I furrowed my brows. He called me, what does he want now? Before I could react, Lucas reached out and hung up the phone. He restarted the car, his tone steady and reassuring. Don't worry about it. I've been looking for someone to deal with him. The guy surnamed G is in trouble, and he won't get away either. With me around, no one will dare to bully you anymore. Those last words, in the quiet car, felt like a small flame igniting the air. I was touched and looked up to thank him. But I noticed his ears were a bit red. Lucas cleared his throat awkwardly. Then, with a hint of awkwardness, he said, I heard from my mom that you agreed to go on a blind date with me? Well, why don't you come over to my place for dinner tonight? My mom made your favorite dish. I turned away, staring out the window at the passing scenery and pedestrians. I forced a smile, mimicking his cough, and said, sure.